Good evening, residents of Everett, Washington. I would like to call to order the Everett City Council meeting of December 1st, 2021. In accordance with the Governor's Healthy Washington guidelines and in an effort to protect city employees and members of the public from transmission of COVID-19, the City Council continues to conduct our weekly council meeting remotely. We are prepared to reopen the council chambers to public meetings when public health considerations indicate it is safe to do so. There are several ways in which you can engage with the council and participate in our meetings. You may watch or participate in our remote meetings by watching live on Comcast Channel 21 or Frontier Channel 29. You may also watch live online at www.everettwa.gov/citycouncil, where you may also watch past meetings. You may call in to listen to the live meeting at any point by dialing 425-616-3920, conference ID 724-887-726#. You'll find the public comment registration form on the City of Everett website under the City Council Department. Once you select register here to provide comment via Zoom, you will need to fill the form out completely if you wish to provide public comment at a future meeting. After the public comment form is submitted, you will receive an email confirmation with the Zoom link and phone number to the meeting. And participants must submit this form at least 30 minutes prior to the meeting. Forms submitted after that time will not receive the Zoom link and number to speak, but may still participate the day of the meeting by submitting comments in writing to council@everettwa.gov. If you need assistance with this process, please contact the council office at 425-257-8703, or you may email Deb Williams directly at dwilliams@everettwa.gov, and she'll be happy to help you. Please note that we do not allow comments on any kind of campaigning, whether for or against ballot measures or candidates running for office. And we also do not accept comments focused on personal matters that are unrelated to city business. Outside of our meetings, members of the public are always welcome to contact council members to provide comments or concerns on any matter via email at council@everettwa.gov or by calling the City Council office at 425-257-8703. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Yes, Mayor Franklin.
Here.
Councilmember Moore.
Here.
Councilmember Murphy.
Here.
Councilmember Roberts.
Here.
Councilmember Vogely.
Here.
Councilmember Toohey.
Here.
Councilmember Bader.
Here.
President Stonecipher.
Here. I'd like to ask Councilmember Roberts to read the land acknowledgement.
Oh, I thought I was doing Pledge of Allegiance, but I'll do the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge the original inhabitants of this place, the Stahobj people and their successors, the Tulalip tribes. Since time immemorial, they have hunted, fished, gathered on, and taken care of these lands and waters. We respect their sovereignty, their right to self-determination, and honor their sacred spiritual connection with the land and water. We will strive to be honest about our past mistakes and bring about a future that includes their people, stories, and voices to form a more just and equitable society.
Thank you. Councilmember Bader, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes, indeed. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do I have a motion for approval of the minutes of November 24th, 2021?
Murphy moves approval. Bader seconds.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Moore.
Yes.
Councilmember Murphy.
Yes.
Councilmember Roberts.
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely.
Yes.
Councilmember Toohey.
Yes.
Councilmember Bader.
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. Thank you. And we'll move on to Mayor Franklin. Good evening, Mayor.
Good evening, Council President and Council members. Happy December. I am very happy to welcome Chief Templeman forward to introduce 2 new Everett police officers for swearing in.
Great. Thank you very much, Mayor Franklin, and good evening, council members. Dan Templeman with the Police Department. And it's my honor tonight to be able to introduce to you our two newest Everett police officers. And I'd like to begin with Officer Alex Guzman-Rodriguez. Alex was born and raised in Toppenish, Washington after graduating high school. Alex moved to Seattle, where she attended South Seattle Community College and received her associate's degree. In 2013, Alex joined the United States Marine Corps and was stationed at MCAS Miramar in San Diego, California for 4 years. While in the military, Alex completed her bachelor's degree in Homeland Security and Emergency Management. Alex also earned her master's degree in criminal justice from Florida International University in December of 2019. After graduating from college, Alex and her husband of 7 years, Christian, moved back to Seattle, the Seattle area, to be closer to family. And as evidenced by her military service and educational path, Alex has always been interested in serving her community. She chose the Everett Police Department over other police departments based on our core values and our commitment to partnering with the community to better address issues. Alex graduated from the Basic Law Enforcement Academy on November 10th and is eager to start her field training. She also looks forward to building relationships with the community members and hopes to leave long-lasting and positive impressions with those she serves, particularly our youth. In their free time, Alex and her husband enjoy running, biking, eating excellent food, and spending time with their respective families. So thanks, Alex, and welcome. All right, next I'd like to introduce Officer Storm Hendricks. Storm was born in Southern California, where she and her sisters were raised by their maternal grandparents. After graduating high school, Storm moved to Hawaii, where she planned to play collegiate soccer, but shortly after moved to Washington State. She recently completed her bachelor's degree in English, graduating in 2020 from Arizona State University. Storm comes to us from the Marysville Police Department with just under 2 years of experience. She enjoys police work for the opportunity it provides to connect with others and uses her diverse background and life experience to help relate to those she interacts with. And for example, Storm was homeless for a period of her life, and she understands the challenges faced by individuals experiencing the same. Storm decided to change departments in search of a better fit, somewhere that felt more like home. And she believes she's found that supportive environment here in Everett. She's excited to continue her policing career and hopes to eventually serve as a school resource officer and in our investigations division. Storm joins the Everett Police Department family with her husband, Thomas, a naval aviator and chef stationed at Naval Air Station Whidbey. In her spare time, Storm plays both recreational and semi-pro soccer, runs marathons, and loves to eat and spend time with family. Welcome, Storm. Thank you. And so I present to City Council Officers Alex Guzman-Rodriguez and Storm Hendricks for swearing in. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion to accept Alex Guzman-Rodriguez and Storm Hendricks as the newest members of the Everett Police Department?
Robert so moves.
Councilmember Toohey seconds the motion.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Moore.
It is with pleasure to welcome you to our city. Thank you for joining us. Yes.
Councilmember Murphy.
Yes, welcome aboard.
Councilmember Roberts.
Yes, excited to bring you both into this department.
Councilmember Vogely.
Also, yes, just thinking of how I could change it up to welcome you in from South Seattle and Southern California. Thanks for being here. Yes.
Councilmember Toohey.
Yes, and welcome.
Councilmember Bader.
Yes, thanks for choosing Everett.
And President Stonecipher.
I'm very happy to vote yes to add these two fine, distinguished women to our police force. Yes.
Are you ready for me to do the oath, President
Yes.
Stonecipher?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
All
give the
right.
oath.
And if you would please both raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, and state your name, do solemnly swear that I'm either a citizen of the United States
that I'm either a citizen of the United States
or a lawful permanent resident,
or a lawful permanent resident,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington,
and the charter and ordinances of the city of Everett,
and the charter and ordinances of the city of Everett,
and that I will faithfully,
and that I will faithfully,
honestly,
honestly,
and impartially
and impartially
perform the duties of police officer of the city of Everett
perform the duties of the city of Everett
according to the best of my ability,
according to the best of my ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Thank you. Welcome aboard, and so glad to have you on our force.
Yeah, I want to just say welcome to you. This is Mayor Franklin. We're thrilled to have you. And with that, I have no further comment, President Stonecipher.
Thank you. We'll move on to council comments and liaison reports, starting with Councilmember Moore.
Yes, I just, at the close of a year where we're having these collaborative leadership meetings with each of us having a relationship with a different area, I had a conversation, and the last conversation apparently this year, or of my tenure, with Ryan Sass in the Public Works Department. And I just want to support this leadership model of collaboration. Mr. Sass and his predecessors have really represented us well in looking out for the best interest of the public. And in the face of that, we also have to recognize that we have infrastructure successes that merge with environmental challenges that really we all acknowledge we need to save our earth. And with that, our Public Works Department, I have to say, really try to balance the best presentation for our citizens and realizing what we can afford to do and how fast we can do it to make our planet sustainable. And today we just spoke a little bit about the public works site selection, which will before us. It's been before us, I think probably, and Brenda, you can recognize this, for many, 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 many years. But I think we've arrived at a point where before us in the next couple of weeks is going to be a study to be done that will help us affirm the right location. And so I just want to inform you of that. Secondly, and I think when you look at all the different factors, there's many, many, many questions. And what we need to do as a council of today versus a council of tomorrow is to inform our replacements or inform those before us about the value and the need for not to slow down and rethink this, because we've thought it over and over and over, but more just to be confident in what the staff has done for us for the past several years. The second part of the things before us in the future are the Port Gardner storage facility, AKA the Kimberly Clark treatment facility that we have in front of us, that is going to solve some of the problems that we've experienced with 100-year storms every 2 years. It's going to make our environment better and healthier, and they're going to need to move more quickly than we might anticipate to put certain places and certain measures in place in cooperation of the port. And finally, the Department of Ecology and Mr. Sass, you can correct me, I think today has set a very, 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 very high, two more varies for nutrition general permit, which means in essence that our sewage treatment plant, which has probably been the shining star for the last decade, it pulls it to a higher standards, and municipalities of our size, it's suggesting that, and it's not significantly scientifically proven, but is suggesting that based upon evidence, they've made decisions to raise the bar in terms of nitrogen content. This will play out for our future council members and for all of us in the future. But in the meantime, we need to make very thoughtful steps as we go forward. So Mr. Sass and your team, hats off to you. We'll hear more about that, but it was a fantastic meeting today. And that's my comments for today.
Thank you. Councilmember Murphy.
Thank you, Council President. I have no liaison reports and no comments this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Roberts.
Thanks, President Stonecipher. Just want to say that I had the good fortune of being part of what's really the kickoff meeting called the Elected Leadership Group to look at Sound Transit North and getting to Everett. I was able to join Mayor Franklin in that meeting, and it's just exciting to see the planning for the alignment really begin to take shape. And there will be an opportunity, there will probably be a number of them, but there will be an opportunity for citizens to have input on the alternatives. I think that deadline is coming up next week, but please, if you're interested, go on the Sound Transit website and get that information for Everett Link. I don't want to give a bad date, but I think it's December 10, but do not hold me to that. But if people are interested, they can go on the website and offer their comments. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilmember Vogely.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Council President Stonecipher. I don't really have much to say. I got my booster shot today, so if you haven't gotten your first vaccine, get it. And if you have, see if you've passed 6 months to get your booster and do that too. And I will also share that my kids got their first shots. They are, let's see, 7 and 10. So we've been waiting patiently and that time has come. Other than that, I have no more. So have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Councilmember Toohey.
Thanks, Council President. I don't have any comments or liaison reports for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Bader.
Thanks, Council President. A couple items here. One, I think many of us here on the council and probably amongst the public heard about the county council moving forward about increasing the sales tax to support housing efforts. While I understand those housing efforts are important, again, I think as I've mentioned in the past, Everett's done more than any other jurisdiction in the county to already support housing efforts and affordable housing, our zoning codes. And I think with Rethink Housing, we'll probably be doing even more than we have done in the past. I am fearful that a sales tax increase would detrimentally affect Everett's effort to move forward on a sales tax increase for Everett Transit in whatever form that looks like. And so just wanted to again express that concern. I think given the effort that Everett has made to keep housing affordable, if it was possible, I would call on the county to exempt us from that so that we could instead focus on better transit, which I think serves much of the same population that is in search of affordable housing. On the second item I'd like to bring up, another note I've heard that the county might not be able to put any conditions on the use of ARPA funds for hotel housing for the hotel they're seeking to purchase, such as requiring residents to be in a treatment program or to restrict it to those who were Everett residents when they became homeless. I'm asking if our staff could connect with the county and get some clarification for us on that matter. So I'd be grateful for that. And finally, since we might hear back from the county that they can't put any guardrails on the project for Everett residents, and I fear that without any of those guardrails in place, we might end up with a situation similar to what we had seen around the gospel mission in the past. I'd like to ask, assuming another council member will support me, that the city attorney come back to us with a no sit, no lie ordinance within approximately 6 blocks of this project. For any portion of those 6 blocks might be in the city of Everett. I'm happy to work with the city attorney on that. If there is another council member that'd be willing to support looking at
that. Council President, this is Council Member Murphy, and I would second Council Member Bader's request that we work with the city attorney to at least draft some language in the event it does turn out that the county is not able to provide any of those sorts of protections, it might be in the city's best interest to at least have that language drafted and available. So I would support that.
Thank you. I will leave it up to you. The two Scotts will work with the city attorney to draft such language for the council's consideration.
Thank you, Council President. That's all I have.
Thank you. I don't have a liaison report. I do have a comment about the agenda for next week. We had originally contemplated holding a public discussion around the collaborative leadership model. Because of some scheduling concerns, and I am not going to be at the meeting next week. I am going to rather send a questionnaire to current council members and will appreciate your providing feedback on the model. I also would offer to meet individually with anyone who would like to talk to me in person. In the meantime, I have had some conversations with the mayor. I've also reached out to the new council members, and our plan is to take your input as well as the input from administration about what has worked well and what improvements could be made for the next year, kind of coupled with what our priorities will be for the next year of work. And we will take up the discussion of our council procedures and our structure of our work when we do the council retreat with the new council, which will be discussing a little bit later in tonight's agenda. So I just wanted to give that update to the public and to you as council members. We will not have that on our agenda next week, but there will be forthcoming a questionnaire, kind of a survey format. That's all I have. Do we have an update from administration?
No update this evening, Council President Stonecipher. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to our city attorney comments. We have Flora Diaz, acting city attorney this evening. Do you have anything for us tonight, Flora?
Thank you. No comments and no executive session.
Thank you. Deb Williams, have we received any comments from the community for public comment?
Good evening, Council President Stonecipher. I've received written comment from Allison Quinn and Roy Holman. I have provided those comments to the council, administration, and clerk as part of the permanent record. I have 3 community members waiting to speak, 1 to speak under public comment, 2 community members to speak on item 22, and I will call on those members when we get to those items. Under public comment, I would like to call on Mr. Roy Holman. Mr. Holman, please unmute yourself, turn on your camera if possible, and please remember to limit your comments to 3 minutes. At 30 seconds, I will be asking you to begin to wrap up. Mr. Holman?
Okay, how's that?
Perfect. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Good to go?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for having me. This is kind of a big topic. I tend to dive deep. I guess it's one of the advantages of losing my work over the last 2 years. I've been really researching about what's going on. So if I may, I'd like to talk a little bit about the COVID situation and some of the mandates and my concerns around this, which certainly applies globally, but certainly right here at home. And I guess I'll just start by saying, as far as many of the choices we're making, I believe they're 180 degrees off of where we should going. I feel like we're following the wrong science over and over and over, like a bad movie. Now, around the masks, around the lockdowns, the science that I'm trusting seems to be suggesting that we're going the wrong way. Masks seem to weaken the immune system and seems to be feeding the pandemic. And the lockdowns, there's lots of suggestions now in science that suggest that we're doing the wrong thing. Now, what really concerns me is we continue to ignore the immune system boosters and the real cures, safe and effective cures that are out there, and seem to be marching towards the vaccine over and over and over. And this is just boggling to me because we have them. We have ivermectin. I won't even go into the whole list of them that are working. Anecdotally, I could tell you stories, but science as well. And we seem to ignore those, and maybe partially because we can't have an EUA, an emergency use authorization for a vaccine unless there are no cures. So it seems to me we've not only ignored them, but we've suppressed them. And now we have a vaccine that, with all due respect to Councilmember Vogely, is not safe, not effective. It's certainly making a lot of money for some people, but you can still transmit, you can still get the disease, and you can also, it's got so many side effects, it just hurts my heart. VAERS is one reporting system that now has almost 1 million adverse reactions listed and 20,000 deaths now. And that's the tip of the iceberg, because the FDA does not encourage reporting, and a lot of other nefarious things around that. It's unbelievable what's going on. And now we're trying to, again, with all due respect, urge them for children who have a 99.9% survival rate on COVID. And to be honest, it's criminal. It greatly concerns me. I know people that are being harmed by the vaccines, and I'm researching and reading about so many.
30 seconds.
How many seconds? 30?
30 seconds.
Okay. So I'm greatly concerned. We don't even know what the ingredients are with this vaccine, and the pharmaceutical industries are immune from liability. So I think we need to step back and see what is going on. Why are we at war with the people, really, and ignoring real science? And it doesn't seem to be about health and safety anymore. It seems to be about fear and control. So
thank you very much, Mr. Holman. I appreciate that very much. President Stonecipher, I have 2 other community members wishing to speak on item number 22, and I'll call on those members at that time. And then I have 1 individual, Tammy Dunn, available to answer any questions under item 13. Thank you.
Thank you. We will move on to our consent item, item 6 on the consent agenda, which is the closing ordinance for the Grand Avenue Park Bridge project, will be moved to our action agenda at the request of Councilmember Murphy. So do I have a motion for the 12 consent items, all except item 6?
Member Bader, so moves.
Roberts, second.
We have a motion and a second. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Moore,
Yes.
Councilmember Murphy,
Yes.
Councilmember Roberts,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely,
Yes.
Councilmember Tui,
Yes.
Councilmember Bader,
Yes.
and President Stonecipher.
Yes. Now we will move on to, we have 7 proposed action items. I'm not reading them into the record because they have been read into the record at a previous meeting. Items 14 through 20. Do we have any questions on these proposed action items? If so, please unmute yourself and make yourself known. Hearing none. Item 21 is also on for proposed action. This is a first reading on Council Bill 2111-59, and I will read that item into the record. First reading, adopt an ordinance creating a special improvement project entitled Evergreen Pump Station Upgrades, Fund 336, Program 007, and repealing ordinance number 3729-20. The third and final reading on this item will be on December 15th. Are there any questions on item 21 for proposed action? If so, please unmute yourself and make yourself known. Seeing none, we will move on to our action items. We're going to start with item 6 that was in the consent agenda. I'll read the item. Accept the Grand Avenue Park Bridge project as complete and authorize the mayor to sign the certificate of completion with Interwest Construction Incorporated. And I will go down the roll. I know Councilmember Murphy had some questions. Let's see, where are you in the roll call? Councilmember Murphy, how about if we start with you? You can tell us your questions, and then we'll go down the rest of the roll following your question.
Sure, thank you. And thank you for pulling this out for further discussion. I was reviewing the paperwork that we were provided by the contractor, and in the documentation, it appears that the contractor is reserving their rights to assert a claim for additional compensation And that is apparently documented in some sort of formal claim document dated April 1st, 2021. And so I just, rather than just approving this item in consent, I thought it might be important not only for all of us as council members, but for the public in general to understand that there are additional claims, I guess, being made at this point by the contractor. And so I was hoping that we might be able to get some sort of a briefing update on this. I recognize that this may be the sort of an item that would need to be briefed in executive session. So if that's the case, so be it. Maybe we could schedule an executive session here to discuss this item soon. Alternatively, if there are publicly available documents or a status that could be provided to us before we take action, I'm mostly interested. I assume that we could move forward with item number 6 at this point and accept that the bridge is in fact complete and authorize the mayor to sign the certificate of completion while there is still a claim outstanding. I want to verify that and then just find out whether or not this is something that we could or should be briefed on either in executive session or now to the extent possible.
Yeah, good evening, Ryan Sass with Public Works. As council's aware, the contractor did file a claim on April 1st on the Grand Avenue pedestrian bridge. The city rejected that claim in its entirety on June 30th of this year. The existence of the claim doesn't affect either our need or our ability to accept the project as complete, which we do need to do. And I can't speak to the details of the claim because there's the potential for future litigation. And Public Works and Legal will be happy to continue to keep council informed with any developments regarding the claim and can certainly give an update in executive session if desired.
That would be great. Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah. Okay, we'll try to get that on the schedule before the end of the year. And at the same time, I would like to give other council members an opportunity to comment or ask questions. So we'll go back up the roll to Councilmember Moore.
No, I thank you for the conversation, Councilmember Murphy, and no comments.
Thank you. Councilmember Roberts.
No, I appreciated Ryan. I appreciate the comments. I appreciate the question. And I appreciate Ryan's pointing out that our moving to accept the project as complete does not appear to have any disposition or any impact on any subsequent actions or claims. And so I don't know if it's appropriate now, but I would be happy to move this item, even though we are still having discussion. So President Stonecipher, I'll just turn to you or accept my motion to move it as part of this process.
Let's go down the roll and then we'll come back to your motion, Councilmember Roberts. Councilmember Vogely.
I don't have any questions, and thank you, Councilmember Murphy, for picking that out of the crowd.
Thank you, Councilmember Toohey.
I don't have any further questions, but again, thank you, Councilmember Murphy, for bringing that up, and look forward to having a further resolution on it. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilmember Bader.
Councilmember Roberts' comments basically read my mind, so I'll just say ditto to his comments, and that's it. Thanks.
And I have nothing further to add, so we'll go back to that motion from Councilmember Roberts. And do I have a second?
Yeah, I'm happy. This is Councilmember Murphy. I'm happy to second the motion.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. We've had the discussion. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Moore?
Yes.
Councilmember Murphy?
Yes.
Councilmember Roberts?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yes.
Councilmember Toohey?
Yes.
Councilmember Bader?
Yes.
President Stonecipher?
Yes. We'll now move to action item number 22. Authorize the mayor to sign the agreement between the Snohomish County Public Transportation Benefit Area Corporation, SCPTBAC, hereafter referred to as Community Transit, and the City of Everett regarding consideration of consolidated transit services. I don't believe we have a staff presentation, but someone can correct me if we do. I think we have Tom Hinkson here to respond to any questions. Let's see, do I hear a motion to approve this item?
Roberts moves approval of item 22.
And do I have a second? I will second it.
Council President, this is Nick Harper. While we don't have a formal presentation, I'm happy to give brief remarks to just provide council some historical context of how we got to where we are this evening and the action before you, if that is helpful.
That would be helpful. Thank you, Nick.
No problem. So, yeah, the impetus for this, I mean, these have been anecdotal conversations for years, but of late, in mid-2018, Council adopted Everett Transit's current long-range plan. And that plan, I think staff believes, demonstrated that the growth necessary to support a growing community that will ultimately serve light rail in the late 2030s was not possible with the status quo. So in 2019, staff began to reassess how transit was being delivered in Everett and took council through a number of workshops to help them understand what alternative delivery methods are available. And those included status quo, no funding change, implementing the long-range plan, which would require a discussion with Everett voters on a potential sales tax increase, which is governed by state law, and then this growth through consolidation model in partnership with community transit. That was all done in 2019 in conjunction with a number of other parallel reviews, as I know you'll all recall, that culminated in the 2020 retreat just prior to COVID, where we were looking at, as the Burke study, I think, directed us, a number of other city services, including fire and libraries, that in theory could be delivered in different ways. So in November of 2019, at our invitation, Community Transit first briefed and addressed council, introducing this concept of growth through consolidation. Then in February of 2020, shortly after that council retreat I referenced, we began the Rethink Transit study and included a growth through consolidation option as one of the three alternatives to be studied and to be commented on by our community. We concluded that Rethink Transit study on June 9th of 2021, where council adopted the findings with the understanding there was support for growth throughout the community, but a question lingered of what was the right growth? Was it implementation of that long-range plan, or was it growth through consolidation? Recognizing that the status quo just wasn't sufficient to serve a light rail community by 2037. At that June meeting of this year, council directed staff to work with community transit to further study in greater detail what that growth through consolidation alternative could look like. The culmination of that work is the action before you tonight, which the Community Transit Board intends to also visit and act on tomorrow, which is allowing the mayor to sign an agreement to form this task force, which has a number of committees to further study and report back to council over an 18 to 24 month period, what a consolidated system would look like and what the ramifications would be from service delivery to cost, all of the associated elements for later council deliberation and ultimate action. So this is really responding to that direction that staff received from council in June of this year to determine how best to chart a path forward to more, in an in-depth way, analyze what a consolidation strategy could look like.
Great, thank you for that reminder of the history. I also wanted to point out that we have some representatives from Community Transit on our call tonight, Roland Behe and Rick Ilgenfritz. So if we have any questions for them, they will be on hand. But at this point, I'm going to go to the 2 community members who would like to speak. And so let's see, Deb Williams, will you get them lined up so we can hear what they have to say?
Absolutely, President Stonecipher. I'm going to begin with Mr. Kunzler. Joe, please turn on your camera if possible, and please unmute yourself. Remember to limit your comments to 3 minutes. Thank you.
No, thank you for having me this evening. Joe Kunzler here, regular Everett Transit and Community Transit writer. It's good seeing everyone this evening. I wish that more council members who have their cameras on, because it's important to know you're actually listening to public comment. Thank you, Councilmember Roberts. Really disappointed in you too, Councilmember Murphy. But yes, I this is standard operating procedure. You know, I always say something about that. But moving on to what we actually even talk about, I'm a huge writer of Everett Transit and Community Transit to get around because I can't drive. I also go to you know, places like Payne Field. Thank you, Councilmember Dewey. You know, and you know, I also, you know, love the electric buses and what you have done with you know, the bus pool project, and I really want to make sure we have the proper funding to continue those kind of projects. And that's going to require a sales tax increase. That's the hump in the room. That's the hard hike ahead. And I think it's important that we have positive negotiations through a framework that's a win-win-win. Obviously, I'd like to see the Everett Transit brand maintained inside community transit, while community transit provides all the backroom stuff like IT, maintenance, bulk purchasing, labor negotiations, and all of that. I also think it's very important, and I appreciate, as someone who depends on transit operators, that there's going to be union representatives at the table on this, because that's extremely important. In short, I don't know how you could have came up with a better framework. This is exactly what riders need, and I hope that you will pass it and engage energetically. And one last thing, as somebody who files a lot of public records requests, if you could please put updates on a website, like minutes of every single meeting, that would be much appreciated, please, for the writers. Thank you so much for all you do, and thanks for taking my comments.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kunzler. We appreciate it. Mr. Howell, Brock Howell, please turn on your camera and please unmute yourself, and please remember to limit your comments to 3 minutes. Mr. Howell?
Sorry for the delay there of getting everything set up. My name, again, is Brock Howell. I'm the director of the Snohomish County Transportation Coalition, or SNOTRAC for short. SNOTRAC is a state and federally funded mobility management coalition that advocates for connecting people and communities in Snohomish County and beyond with safe, equitable, and accessible transportation. To do this, we convene public, nonprofit, and private transportation human service agencies to identify mobility gaps and opportunities, especially for priority populations of people with disabilities, older adults, youth, low-income households, people of color, tribes, people born in foreign countries or otherwise speak English as a second language, and veterans, basically everyone. A unifying issue across our priority populations is lower or no access to or ability to use a personal vehicle. And in addition, our priority populations tend to be disproportionately impacted by poor land use patterns, transportation options that increase exposure to air pollutants and household and housing transportation costs, which in turn decrease life expectancy and socioeconomic mobility. So with that, with SNOTRAC, very short comments on the matter before us. And in full disclosure, Tom Hingston and Roland Behe are members of SNOTRAC's executive committee, and both the city and community transit provides some financial support. Tonight's proposed framework for continuing to discuss a potential merger is an important next step toward continuing to improve transportation service in the city of Everett. As SNOTRAC is a convener of transportation agencies to improve mobility for all people, this falls right in line with what we're all about, and we would encourage you to take this next step. It's important to remind the council that the Rethink Transit study found that the growth through consolidation option will lead to by far the most transit service and will best serve what was termed equity priority populations within the report. In addition, the only option that would have a chance of implementing Everett Transit's long-range plan is the growth through consolidation option. So continuing these conversations is important, and so happy to see that this was on the docket today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. President Stonecipher, that's all I have at this time.
Thank you. And so now we will go to our council conversations and deliberation. I can't remember, clerk, do I have a motion on the table?
Yes, you do.
Okay, very good. So we will go down the roll and see if we have questions or comments, starting with Council Member Moore.
Yes, and I do have a comment, and it's not a surprise to my colleagues. Are we still at the point, this might be to Tom if he's not here, or to Nick. We were faced in the last, or we were looking at a model where if we raised 0.3 cents per sales tax, we could make our current system sustainable. And if we went to community transit, it's double that at 0.6%. Is that still an accurate memory in my thinking?
I will defer to our transit director, Tom Hinkson, on that one. Councilmember Moore, thanks.
Tom Hinkson, Everett Transit. Yep. Thank you for the question. I think part of our process will be to confirm that presumption that we, even at 9/10, are not able to build the kind of system that we would expect to have by 2037. So that will be part of our task, is to demonstrate that.
Okay, so Tom, the next question is, the obstacles in my brain are that for that in today's time has a lower level of service for our citizens. So I can appreciate these commuters who want to flow through Everett, but if I recall, under this study, will they look at the level of service for paratransit outside of the 1 mile distance and the citizens in our community who will be disserved by this merger at a higher tax rate?
So part of the process will be to show, the real value of this if it is indeed played out. And I believe that when we work through that service plan, I think the presumption is that what you're suggesting is that you wouldn't necessarily get more service for twice the money. And that is clearly not the case from what we've looked at. The plans that were used in the growth through consolidation study had a very robust network of service exceeding what we would have been able to do with our 9/10 in the city of Everett.
Okay. And the third question is, we have been, I don't want to say words, but I've only got 2 council meetings left, kind of duped in Sound Transit in that we have a minority of votes. So in this study, the largest municipality, who we've already talked about fall victim to social services and other services, will this study suggest a larger share of votes on a community direction in terms of policy versus what we're experiencing down in King County? And maybe that's it might be contradictory, but under the current model, I would just suggest that we have a stronger voice with everything that needs to flow into Everett to work in the county. And maybe this is just a statement. So, and I appreciate, first of all, Tom, I appreciate everything you've done. You've been a great transit leader. So if this is pushing you tonight, I just want to say thank you for the 12 years we've worked together and everything else. But the question is, how do we ensure that we have a voice in the direction of a countywide transit organization?
I assure you that a very large part of this conversation is governance. And so among the policy committee, those issues will be hammered out.
Tom, I have complete faith in you and the administration. Thank you for your answers.
Thank you.
And I'll just say, Councilmember Moore, yeah, I mean, the governance structure of the PTBA is denoted in state law. So there is clear guidance currently as to how Everett, if we came in as the largest city in the system, what our role would be on that board. But yeah, to echo what Tom indicated, like all of your previous questions, all of these things are the types of things that, based on council's direction, we're looking to dig into over the next 18 to 24 months to understand and report back. There's been no preconceived conclusions at this point. The purpose is to answer all of these questions primarily around cost, service delivery, governance, and labor, and bring that back to council in the future for further deliberation and discussion.
You know, if I were to rephrase my comments, it probably would be, I know that, and maybe this is clarifications, because I have confidence in the administration and the transportation team in representing the city's interests. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Murphy.
Thank you, President Stonecipher. As usual, Nick, you've done a really nice job of recapping where we are on this. You know, I've only been around for about 9 years on the city council, but it feels like we've been grappling with the future of Everett Transit for most of those past 9 years, and in particular, the last 3 or 4 in real earnest discussions and meetings many times. And so I appreciate the recap. And Tom, also appreciate those clarifications and the good questions from Councilmember Moore. This decision is obviously a very important decision for our community, you know, long term. And so doing this additional due diligence work to really explore and get into some detail about how this consolidation merger would work with community transit is very, very important work. But that being said, and so I'll definitely support this. That said, though, I don't want to imply that we've left the other option behind, or that option is not still viable or on the table. So I just want to make sure that, at least from my perspective, that my support of this $49,000, I think, to really dig into this third option on the consolidation merger and get those details. That's a very, very important piece of the puzzle in order to be able to make a great decision for our city in 18 or 24 months for the city council members that will be finally dealing with the resolution of this question at that time. So I'm supportive, but I just want to make, at least from my perspective, the statement that I don't think we should be at all you know, eliminating that other option with the retain the service and have a more modest increase. That depending on how things go with this work that we're doing with community transit over the next 18 months, it's possible that could still be a better option, at least for the next 10 to 15 years. So anyway, that's really just my statement. I don't think I really have any further questions, but appreciate the previous clarifications. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Roberts.
Thank you. Appreciate the dialogue. I think and Nick, very much appreciate your walking us through that history, because the history with the Burke study, this history of studying the consolidation process, and the history of the council's deliberations and directions for us to look at these alternatives is really consistent with the action that's before us. I think it's important to recognize that what this is a study. What it is not is a consolidation action. And so, but in order for us to do what we have as a council said we must do in looking and taking a deep dive into the details, that's what this study will provide. It will inform that discussion, it does not preempt it. So I don't have anything further to add, but I appreciate the dialogue, appreciate the questions, and I appreciate Tom, your response, and Nick, your presentation. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Vogely.
I just want to say thank you, colleagues, so far, because I was a little bit worried. One of my fears, I suppose, was that taking action on this would really kind of make it sound as if the community transit and Everett Transit consolidation was like, yep, this is it. And so I'm very happy to hear you guys say, no, wait, this is not the end all be all. We can still and must pursue the other option as well, because, well, it's important, because this may not be the end. And I do want to also bring up that, yes, we have been working on this for who knows how long. And yes, this council has definitely said, figure this out for the consolidation. But considering our federal administration change and the infrastructure dollars that are coming in and the Build Back Better dollars. But like the infrastructure plan, investments will focus on climate change mitigation, resilience, equity, and safety for all users, including cyclists and pedestrians. There's a lot more, but also there's money for transit and rail to modernize public transit, upgrade existing infrastructure, and bring transit service to new communities. So I just want us to make sure that we're in a different time. And so a consolidation effort might not be the best way to go. Yes, we need that information, but there's so much more different information out there that we also need to look at, and possibly more money, plus the PSRC money that's coming for transit specifically. That's kind of like the ARPA that we're getting. So thank you, and let us figure out all the options. No holds barred. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Toohey.
Yeah, well, I concur with my colleagues on this is a very vital piece of information, that study that we need to have in order to make any kind of decision. And I do think as we get closer to making that decision, there'll be other things that we really need to have vetted as thoroughly as we're going to get from this study, to make sure we make the right decision for Everett Transit when we have that opportunity. So I will support this, and it's kind of the next step. It's not the end step, but it certainly is the right next step. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Bader.
Thanks, Council President. I continue to have a concern that Everett voters are not going to support a 0.6 increase. I think some of my other colleagues have alluded to that too. And so absent some data that shows there's a strong likelihood that Everett voters, not just Everett transit riders who may or may not be voters or even residents in the city of Everett, but likely Everett voters would support this. I'm concerned that this money is not well spent. Nick, is there anything that's part of this study that's going to vet whether or not Everett voters are willing to support 0.6 versus 0.3?
A good question, Councilmember Bader. There's no, political polling data that we would even attempt to derive out of this investment of public dollars, because that wouldn't be appropriate. I think as we have had conversations at the staff level with community transit and thought back at past transportation initiatives, the key to even come to the council in 18 or 24 months with a viable plan is going to be showing the value proposition and the return on investment that your typical Everett resident would receive for this increased cost. And if the study can't demonstrate that, no different than how the state doesn't, has to go through the same exercise with transportation packages. Sound Transit has gone through the same exercise. Certainly King County Metro, the city of Seattle, with additional transportation investment and infrastructure and mobility. Those results will speak for themselves, I suppose, is the simplest way to state it. So I guess I don't want to get the cart before the horse in saying that I guess in my mind, while $49,000 is not insignificant, given the gravity of the decision and the long-term benefits or lack thereof that it means for our community and the region, it's a relatively modest and I think reasonable investment to get data to make those types of informed decisions of whether we have a true value proposition that our residents would find is a reasonable return to make that additional commitment financially, as the rest of this PTBA has been. Everett opted out of this decades ago. And so for years, the rest of the region has been paying substantially more for transit service than our community has. That's been a deliberate choice. And I think what this investment represents is for us to determine whether or not our residents might want to consider whether they've made the right choice or whether they might want to invest more. But yeah, until we have that information, I don't think I can speculate on what the answer would be. And I think that's why this $49,000 to me is, as a staff, is a reasonable cost allocation to gather that information for council, the city, our community to make a better decision.
Oh, great answer, Nick. Thanks for that. Anyhow, I'm just concerned that if I'm certainly a transit supporter. I think, as everybody knows, I ride it a lot, and if there's public support out there for a 6/10, which would almost certainly mean a merger with CT, then I would have not much trouble getting on board, as long as it it's preserved kind of Everett's rights, as other council members have mentioned. So appreciate that, but anyhow, I guess I'll ultimately be making that decision as an Everett voter, but it's good, appreciate that info, and we're very sensitive. I don't want us to, I really worry that if we just put a 6/10 out there and it fails, that we don't get a do-over for 3/10, at least for probably half a decade, given voter sentiment. So that I continue to be concerned about that. Anyhow, thanks for
my only, I guess, closing comments, understanding that your concern really well. Nothing that council is approving tonight, if it is approved, foregoes any of those options. This is really, we're not limiting the universe of outcomes here. We're simply exploring one in greater detail because, frankly, it's the only one we have to explore with another agency. And so once we have done that work, I think, all options are on the table. Nothing is being eliminated. No conclusions have been drawn. And the hope would be not 18 to 24 months from now, we are all in a better position to determine whether that long-range plan implementation or growth through consolidation makes the most sense. But yeah, I just don't see another way for us to get there, but to go through this exercise in a more regional way.
Great. Again, thank you, Nick. Appreciate the info. And that's all I have, Council President. Thank you.
Thank you. I see a couple council members have their hands up, but I'm going to go through my comments first, and then we'll go back down the roll one more time. So I will pull the seasoned council member card. I've been talking about our transit agency since I started on council, and helped get the sales tax increase approved to get us to the 6/10 where we currently are. I strongly support this task force. I believe we absolutely have to get the information that will be derived from this effort to help inform our analysis of our alternatives. Every person that has spoken tonight has made some assumptions about what this will mean. And we are all just talking in the dark. We have no information to inform those assumptions. We need information to understand what is the cost and what is the service that will be provided at that cost. And only then can we and our community make a determination about whether this, which method is the best deal. But I have said before and will say again, if we have any hope of achieving our growth targets and without spoiling the quality of life in our community, we simply must fund public transportation to a higher level. We know 6/10 does not provide the level that we need. In my day job, I help organizations make decisions like this, and we do it with data. And that's what we need. We need to get the data. And part of that is to find out what could a consolidation look like. We know what the cost is going to be. What we don't know is what is the governance structure going to be? What does it mean for our union employees whose livelihoods are intricately linked with our agency? What does it mean for service levels? What does it mean for the capital expenses that we have to put into our agency? What does it mean for, and this is the part that we haven't received any information about, what does it mean for congestion on our roads? I mean, I've been out, if you've been out canvassing over the last few years, there is a growing need to address transportation issues in our neighborhoods and in our community. And part of that solution could be more public transportation so we can get some of the cars off the roads. And we're simply providing a level of service now that does not entice anyone to take it unless they have no other option. So I agree with Councilmember Murphy and Councilmember Roberts. Taking this action does not preclude the option to remain independent. May very well be the most economical way to approach our public transportation needs. And as I think Councilmember Vogely points out, the funding landscape may have changed in a favorable way. I don't know, but until we have all these data points that we can use to assess the alternatives and make a recommendation to our voters, at the end of the day, the city council is not going to decide this at all. I think Councilmember Moore and Councilmember Bader point out, we've got to go before the voters, but we have to tell them what they're going to get. I'm not worried that they won't support an increase. I think it will really depend on if they see it as a good value. And so that's what that's the work that we are set to do. And so this task force is one. At the same time, at some point in the new year, we're going to need to revisit the analysis that was performed on our staying independent model. With the new funding assumptions, and I'm sure there's probably new cost assumptions, especially as we look at inflation. And we also need to do some analysis about congestion. I think if we're going to ask our voters to approve a sales tax increase or decide not to, they need to know what that means about their ability to get from their home to I-5 to go to work, what that means about their ability to get to the grocery store at certain times of day. I mean, those are the comments that I'm getting from our public. And I think that we need to provide them with some information so that we can collectively make an informed decision. Because at the end of the day, the council's not going to vote on this. The public is going to vote on it. And we need to provide them with the information they need to take that action in a logical and well thought out way. We'll go back through the roll because I know we've got more comments, and we'll start with Councilmember Moore. Oops, you're muted.
Oh, I said thank you, Council President. And I appreciate your tenure and all you've devoted to our council, because it's really quite, it is phenomenal. So thank you, Brenda, for that. You can see I'm kind of going through remorse as I'm in my I did not run again mode. But I think as you look at history, it's always been about first of all, I guess I won't be pontificating, which I always do. But really, this action is I think 100% supported. Maybe what we're talking about is the answers we want you to give us. And there's kind of this dichotomy of, are we trying to improve climate conditions by moving people quicker, or are we trying to serve the citizens who have the least access to transit? And when I look at community transit, I think of it as I'm trying to move the major population of people as quickly as I can to their destination, given we want to work remotely. And when I look at Everett Transit, I think we want to serve the people who have the least access to transit. And that's what I want the study to peel out, is not just dollars and cents. There's a heart in this and what we've been able to accomplish. I think the second piece is the 3/10 versus the 6/10. So the study should show, do you want to serve the people who have the least access to transit? Or do you want to serve the people that need the greatest mobility to affect climate change? Because they're two completely different priorities. Two completely different priorities. And I've not seen the rural model. And Nick, I appreciate the fact that they're paying a higher, the regional areas are paying a higher level of cost for transit because they want mobility. They don't need services within our own town because they just walk down to the food bank. We don't have that here in Everett. It's a completely different model. Compare us to what the concept of regional transit. And I could be wrong, but this is kind of the social dynamic that I think this study needs to address. Is we found that with social services. So how does it not parallel? It is great that anybody from Monroe can go down and get a job as quickly as possible. As Councilmember Bader is educated, I need 1 seat. I want 2 seats. I don't need 3 seats. That's different than serving the people that have the least access to transit. And now I sound like I'm some moral person. I'm not. I'm just saying that the part of the study, which I'm going to vote yes for wholehandedly, has to deal with that political social issue. That's my comment.
Thank you. And Councilmember Roberts.
Thank you. I actually think most of what I would want to add has been covered. So I would just say that, as a matter of fact, the worst transportation traffic in the state of Washington is the I-5 corridor from Everett to Seattle. It is arguably one of the worst in the nation. It has been measured as such. So we are dealing with those realities. But I guess the only other thing I would add is that, and Council President, you said it very well, we need the data in order to understand what our options are. I think we indeed do. I also think it would be, if we think about not doing the study, and I hope that is not the case, but if we think about not doing the study and then having this discussion with the public, I think that would also be challenging, that we have not then done our due diligence. This is due diligence so that we can inform the public what the options are, what the costs are, what the investment decision really is. And that's an informed public, and then they get to make decisions. And so I don't need to add to that, but I think it's been a really good discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, Councilmember Murphy, I skipped over you. So Councilmember Murphy.
No problem. I actually have no further comments at this time. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Vogely.
Thank you. And this has been a dialogue conversation. So kudos to us, because, you know, me and my, anyway, I want to be certain that, that staff will work just as diligently on how Everett Transit could stay Everett Transit as they will work, I'm certain, on how we can merge with community transit. So speaking of fear, you know, because there is a perception that many folks in our city and leadership roles are definitely gung-ho consolidation. And so I just want to put that out there. I don't know what the cost would be for making certain that we are as diligent, like I said, as, you know, to figuring out Everett Transit. And I don't necessarily think there's a dichotomy with the, you know, serving people and which people are getting served, because as I stated earlier with like the infrastructure plan, here's another piece that I didn't read. Reconnect communities and fund planning, design, demolition, reconstruction of street grids, parks, and other infrastructures. And transit is very much integrated with safety. You know, if we're going to get our all those curves that there are so many crashes on, like 19th, like 7th Avenue by the school, like other places that I can't think of right now, but I know they're out there, or just the long straight shots, you know, bus infrastructure, pedestrian safety, cyclist safety, street safety is all integrated, and getting people out of their cars. We need a great transit system so that the people in cars are jealous and they want to ride the bus. So, oh, look, there's bus only lanes now. Well, so I think that there is much that can be done to move both things forward. And yeah, definitely want to know what the cost would, I think I've already said it. So, and just essentially trust, you know, it's hard to trust people in power. We hear that all the time. So, and that goes, yeah, okay, so I was having tea and I have this little thing here that says impression is for the now, trust is for the future. And I've had a few impressions of community transit and I want to trust them, and that has to be earned. So yes, thank you. Let's just remember it's all interconnected. You're muted.
Thank you. It wouldn't be a Zoom meeting if we weren't muted. Councilmember Toohey.
Yeah, I don't think I have any more further comments or questions. It's just that, as I said before, this is a necessary step that we need to take.
Thank you. Councilmember Bader.
No additional comments. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have no additional comments. Mayor Franklin.
Yeah, thank you, President Stonecipher. I just wanted to briefly respond to Councilmember Vogeley's request that staff continue to explore our own option. And I can tell you that that happens on a daily basis. We are responsible for running a transit organization and running it sustainably and planning for the future. And so we continue to do that every day. Every decision we make is with the future of Everett Transit in mind. And so, of course, we will do that work. We are planning for the long-term success of that organization. And that will happen simultaneously to any other process. That is our responsibility to run a successful transit organization like any department within the city. We do that in all departments. And so we will continue to do that and keep you all very informed of the health and well-being and future success of Everett Transit. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, council colleagues, for this healthy discussion and debate. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Moore?
Yes.
Councilmember Murphy?
Yes.
Councilmember Roberts?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yes.
Councilmember Toohey?
Yes.
Councilmember Bader?
Yes.
President Stonecipher?
Yes. Now we will move into the third and final public hearing for the 2022 proposed budget. And at this time, I'd like to turn over the meeting to Councilmember Murphy, our budget chair.
Thank you, Council President. As you noted, this is our third and most likely final public hearing. We have been through many months of briefings and public hearings and comments and questions from council members and staff presentations. And So at this time, I would ask if we have any additional staff briefing or presentation this evening.
Council Member Murphy, we had not intended to provide additional information. Certainly if council requests that as the discussion occurs with our 2022 budget, we're happy to provide some additional input.
Okay, great. Thank you, Lori. I just wanted to make sure we gave everyone an opportunity. I also would ask Deb whether or not at this time we have any public who wish to make comment at this time.
Thank you, Councilmember Murphy. We do not.
Okay. And then I would also like to ask our council members, and I guess we would just go down the line here and ask if any council members have any questions at this time or comments regarding the budget before we close the public hearing. So I'd start with Council Member Moore.
Thank you, Councilmember Murphy. I just want to thank you for what seems to be a perpetual role of being budget chair. And thank you for the job of doing so. I think that through our conversations, we have vetted much information, and I have no further comments. So thank you, Councilmember.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Moore. Let's see, Councilmember Roberts, any questions or comments on the budget at this time?
Thanks, Councilmember Murphy. I would just say thank you as our budget chair for bringing us through the process. I also want to thank the staff. Every one of us knows this has been a most unusual period with the pandemic and so on. A very difficult and challenging budget for many reasons, and it was difficult and challenging before COVID. So I just want to thank the staff and all who've been involved in this. I have no further comments or questions regarding the budget. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Roberts. Not sure if I'm going in order here, but Councilmember Vogely.
Thank you. I have a few comments, and first and foremost, I see many amendments happening from this approved budget coming up in the year. I know there always are. Councilmember Moore often says that it is a working, flowing, liquid, whatever. And so my possible amendments to come into the future will probably be regarding the neighborhood grant amounts. You know, they've been taken from 2,000 down to 1,000 per year. And while some neighborhoods do not utilize the entire amount, some neighborhoods probably will not be happy. And then there's some neighborhoods that don't exist. So I know we used to have I can think of the icon, it's a little light bulb, but you know, the leftover money would be pooled together, and then the neighborhoods that needed that money could utilize it. And I think that went away, and now it's gone down less. So that's something that I imagine will be brought forward at a later date for a possible amendment. And oh shoot. And different staffing scenarios. I know that there's been a lot of movement in staff and FTEs and this and that. And so I'm just putting that out there as a kind of, I might be looking at that a little bit later. But for now, I think that as it has been fleshed out, we can work with that for now because it's fluid, and I will not be asking for any last minute amendments to this budget. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Vogely. Councilmember Bader.
Sorry, was anticipating Councilmember Toohey first, but
I'm sorry.
You know, I other than my regret that funding to bring back the 4th of July parade isn't restored, I'm at peace with the budget, even though there are other regrets too. But other than that comment, hoping that, as Councilmember Vogely mentioned, the things like fuller neighborhood funding and 4th of July parade would be something that can be brought back in the very near future as we continue to recover out of the pandemic. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Bader. Council President Stonecipher, any questions or comments at this time?
I would just say that I will support the budget. It's, I think as Councilmember Moore has in the past pointed out, always a budget is just a plan. I've also said that it's an expression of your values, and I'm glad to see that we're adding some staffing to the homelessness concerns that we have in our community. And as Councilmember Vogely pointed out, there will be time to have amendments to the budget in the future as we see how things turn out when we return to a post-pandemic, hopefully post-pandemic economy, and figure out what we're facing and what those needs that emerge at that time are. So I will support the budget as it's been written.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And for my own self, two things. First, I also want to thank the staff, Susie, Rayanne, the entire finance staff, and of course all the department folks that have been involved in putting this budget together. This is a monumental effort made even more challenging by this pandemic and working remotely, and the collaboration and cooperation has been terrific as usual. So Susie and team, just really want to thank you for all your hard work on this. Secondly, I will be bringing forward, when we get to that point, after we close the public hearing and go into the budget deliberations, I will be bringing forward as Councilmember Vogely says, sort of a last minute budget amendment. I have been working on this. And I think I've brought this up several weeks ago with council in my comments, but I've been working with Mayor Franklin and Chief Templeman and Deputy Mayor Harper the last several weeks on putting together a proposal that would amend this budget to add 8 additional police officers utilizing our COPS grant, which we were very fortunate to secure back in 2020. And that change would include the addition of 8 additional police officers funded by primarily the COPS grant. The total cost of this would be $1,422,480. And of that 1.422 million, just over 1 million, and to be specific, $1,002,040 would be covered via utilization prudently of the COPS grant revenue. And the additional $420,440 would be covered by increasing the non-departmental Fund 009 budgeted vacancies offset amount to balance the budget. So I'll be bringing forward that amendment here later in the meeting, but I did want to just give you that heads up. And with that, I do see Councilmember Toohey has her hand up, I think.
Yes.
Do you have another question or comment?
I haven't had one yet, but I'd like to have just a minute.
Oh, did I skip over you? I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's all right.
Oh, sorry about that.
I just, a few of the things that Councilmember Bader brought up, I also would like to see at some point in time this year, if we get through ARPA funds or whatever, to restore the hours of operation of our library. We're still under those hours. It's an essential amenity that I'm sure more and more people need to utilize our services that we provide them. And I believe it's not a lot of money. It's like 2 FTEs would satisfy that and restore all of our hours, so we don't have a day of the week where we're closed. So I just want to put that on the table also as something that I feel is vitally important to our community. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I apologize for skipping over you earlier.
No worries.
Councilmember Murphy, would you mind if I address that with
Sure.
just briefly?
Absolutely.
And so at this point, the 2022 proposed budget does adequately fund the library for 7-day-a-week operations. It is slightly less hours than pre-pandemic, but an increase in the hours in what we're currently doing at the library. And so I just wanted to clarify that with council. At this point, the 2022 budget does allow for the opportunity to open the library back up 7 days a week.
Thank you for that, Lori. Appreciate that very much. With that, having listened to the council members and staff, and I don't think we had any public, Council President, I would turn this back over to you so we can close the public hearing and move forward, hopefully with a vote on the budget.
Very good, thank you. And I'm just going to check in with Deb Williams. We did not have any members of the public to comment on during the public hearing, did we?
President Stonecipher, we did not.
Thank you. I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved by Councilmember Moore.
Second,
Is there a second? Thank you. We have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Moore,
Yes.
Councilmember Murphy,
Yes.
Councilmember Roberts,
yes.
Councilmember Vogely,
Yes, I do have one more question, so I think I still get to answer it or get it asked. Okay, yes, close the
Yes, you
hearing.
will.
Councilmember Toohey,
Yes.
Councilmember Bader,
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. Now we'll take up the action. It's Council Bill 2111-48, third and final reading. Adopt the proposed ordinance appropriating the budget for the City of Everett for the year 2022 in the amount of $761,494,955.
So moved by Councilmember Moore, although I would defer to Councilmember Murphy if that is actually Councilmember Murphy, you should.
Happy to second. Thank you, Councilmember Moore.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second, and now we will go down the roll and ask if there are any questions or comments, starting with Councilmember Moore.
No, again, thank you, Councilmember Murphy, for your years of service here, and I'm happy to entertain amendment. And staff, what a crazy year. I mean, the ebbs and tides. I think what our community needs to know is that there were so many negative and harmful things to our fiscal systems that were related to COVID. But what we're able to do next year is partially due to how much we didn't spend on what we did. And so I'm just saying that the administration and the budget team in preparing this budget, it's quite phenomenal that we're able to maintain the services. It doesn't mean we're going to maintain the services forever. It means that there are still those structural deficits that we always talk about, 1% property tax cap, but we're in the good times. There's good times and bad times. The economy's recovering, and I just am so happy about our budget team, our fiscal team at the city, and how much they do to not only think about today, but think about tomorrow. So I'm just so happy to make the motion on this particular item.
Thank you. And Councilmember Murphy.
Thank you, Council President. As I said before, I would like to bring forward an amendment to our proposed 2022 budget. I have been working with Chief Templeman, the mayor, and deputy mayor on this for the past several weeks. I think we can all agree that public safety is one of the highest priorities that our community looks to for our city among many priorities. And as we all know, our police staffing has been relatively flat over many years while the city has continued to grow. And we know that the city will continue to grow based on all the projections, the additional housing being built. And so I really would like to see us take a bold step forward to add 8 additional police officers, again, which would be funded primarily by the COPS grant. So just to be specific, again, since I'm putting this amendment forward, we would add 8 police officers to the budget. We would increase the general fund COPS grant revenue by $1,002,040. We would increase police fund 031 expenditures by $1,422,480 to cover the cost of the 8 police officers. And the difference there would be funded through an increase to the non-departmental fund 009 budgeted vacancies offset amount, and that amount is $420,440. You know, seeing the 2 new police officers, looks like great officers that we've hired. I'm really excited about all of the things that the chief and his team are doing to promote public safety in our community. And I do believe we have a terrific police department that will attract people and employees will want to stay. As I also mentioned a few weeks ago, not a part of this amendment, but an important tool, I think, will be really making a bold statement in terms of our recruitment and retention efforts. And so I've been working also with the chief the last couple of weeks to bring forward a proposal, which I should have within the next couple of weeks to discuss in further detail, that would really put our money where our mouth is in terms of recruitment efforts to really ramp up, fill our open positions, including what I hope will be these additional 8 positions, as well as recognize the good work of our existing staff by including some retention dollars as well. So with that said, I would propose that amendment and would look forward to hopefully having some support from colleagues.
Councilmember Bader, I would be happy to support that motion or that amendment. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to amend the budget to add 8 police officers. We will go down the roll, starting from the beginning again on the amendment before we take a vote on that. So that will go back to Councilmember Moore.
Wow, in the pole position every time tonight. I guess I would say that in everything we've heard and everything we do, public safety is of the utmost importance to our community. And then there's a social dynamics related to what we perceive our officers to do. So I'm just going to say, absolutely, I'm going to support this addendum or this amendment, because I know that under our current leadership and under our historical leadership, that our law enforcement officers have served our community in the most positive way. We have developed so many, the COIT program, so many ways that understand that our police officers are not there to incarcerate. They're there to make our community better. So simply said, they're there to make our community better. We need more of them, and I support this amendment.
Thank you. Council Member Murphy spoke to the amendment. Would you like to speak again?
Well, just briefly, I know that the administration is supportive of this. I certainly want to make sure they have the opportunity to chime in if they see fit, but really appreciate Chief Templeman working with me on this, Nick Harper, and appreciate the support of the mayor. Mayor Franklin, I know, is in support of this as well, but would certainly like to see them have an opportunity to speak at some point as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Roberts.
Thanks, President Stonecipher. I would just, I support the amendment, and I hope that we will have an opportunity through this amendment to also expand recruitment as far as diversity is concerned for our officers. It was great to see some gender equity represented in the action we took tonight. I would like to see more of that. I don't feel a need to change the amendment. I support it, but I would just offer that as a thought. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Council Member Fogley.
Well, I don't support this amendment for various reasons. And so, yes, public safety is of ultimate importance, and that means different things to different people. And not all of our residents equate police with safety. I do think that our law enforcement team is doing a great job, and I have no qualms with that. And I just want to put that out there right now. You guys are doing great. And under Chief Templeman's leadership and de-escalation and all of the things, you know, before I was on council, I was working with Templeman, I was speaking with, having dialogue about, you know, de-escalation and crisis intervention and all that stuff. And it's very important. And 1.4-ish million, I can't remember exactly what you said, but considering that we are hiring some great folks, it looks like, and it is hard to keep up with the turnover due to retirement and whatnot. I'm not sure that this money would actually get used because the COPS grant has to be for new hires or new positions. But then I also know that even, you know, you have to keep a fully functioning team with beat officers. And if there's 12 folks and 6 of them have called out, and you have the 6 people that are under the COPS grant, well, they have to go and work on the street. So, you know, I get it. So essentially it could be done. There's just a lot of nuance, and I think that $1.4 million could actually possibly, if we can find that money. Okay, so it's only the COPS grant money. If it was some other kind of money, because we will end up paying for that after the first few years, because that's what the grant says. COET still needs places to services to support the people that they are meeting on the streets. So public safety, yeah, COET, knock them out. 3 or 2 social workers and 1 supervisor of social worker, you know, yes, we've got 3 of those, but where are the people going to go? Maybe to the new place that the county is bringing us, that there's going to be much discussion about. So public safety, yes. Does that mean more law enforcement officers that we might be able to encourage to come here? No. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilmember Toohey.
Yeah, thanks, Council President. Well, you know, being in the downtown business every day, we've really seen an uptick, and I think I've mentioned this before, in just activity. It's not necessarily at all from homeless people, but shoplifters and all kinds of things. And when we do have this, the police come in, walking the beat, coming into the businesses, being a presence, we see a difference. And so, and that's kind of a luxury to have enough police officers where they can be walking around retail areas and things like that. So, I mean, I really think that we are short police officers for the type of community that we are, and it's just getting bigger. And we really want to promote our businesses and make them feel safe. And I know that there's some things happening across the nation in retail businesses that are very scary. And so it really makes you step back as a business owner and really think about that. So I think if we can move forward with really supporting our police officers, and so that they can come back and help the businesses, which would be great, along with all the other things that they do. I think that's really a vital key component of our community as we move into the future and try to bring more businesses and people here to live here. So I think it's an important step.
Thank you. Councilmember Bader.
I don't have anything additional to add. Great comments from my colleagues. Thank you.
And I'll say from my perspective, clearly the COPS grant provided an opportunity for us to add police officers. And I think the problem that we have had in the past and in the present is that we just can't keep on top of the hiring process. And there are a lot of reasons for that. It's happening in other industries other than law enforcement. You know, there are staffing shortages in many areas, nursing and teachers and accountants and everything. The concern I have with adding police staffing options is twofold right now. One, can we actually fulfill the hiring process and bring these people on board? And two, if we can't, what message are we sending to the community that, you know, we put things in the budget and then we don't deliver on what we say we're going to do? As I mentioned before, a budget is a plan, and it's also a expression of your values. And if we know that we probably can't deliver on that, then it is really a little bit misleading to our community. And so I guess I would ask, how many vacancies do we have right now? And have we done a forecast to see who's retiring in the next year? I know we've heard stories that there were going to be several retirements, and really a concern that we can even keep our current staffing levels where they're at, even with our hiring processes as robust as they are. Is Chief Templeman here to talk about this tonight?
Yeah, Chief Templeman is here, I believe. And I think he can speak to the exact number of vacancies. Lori, I see you on the screen, but.
I guess I haven't looked, but I believe he is on the call. So let's maybe wait for a minute and see. I'll look too.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
See me? Okay. Good evening, Dan Templeman, Police Department. Yeah, so we currently have 17 vacant police officer positions, and we can estimate and provide our best guesses going into next year. I would not be surprised to see maybe another 10 to 12 departures next year. But the one thing I do want to mention is that, and as Council Member Murphy had noted, that we've been working collaboratively on some retention and recruiting incentives to kind of bolster our efforts there to reduce the attrition rate and then hopefully increase the recruiting that we're doing. But I did want to mention that, yes, it is a challenge. It will be a challenge no matter what that number is going into next year. But we have increased our background investigation capacity. Throughout all these years that I've been chief, we've had 2 full-time background investigators. We have increased that to 10. That is the largest number of background investigators of any department that I know of in the state of Washington. And we're already starting to see the benefits of some of that with some diversity. We're getting to some diversity in the list because we're going deeper into our lists. And just the volume, right, has picked up tremendously by increasing that capacity there. And I also just wanted to mention, and I may just take this opportunity in response to Council Member Roberts' comments regarding increasing our diversity. I have not had the opportunity yet to share this news, but we were awarded a diversity hiring grant from the Criminal Justice Training Commission. I had previously mentioned it to all of council that we had applied for that grant. We received the full allotment of $60,000 to bolster our recruiting efforts, specifically as it relates to underrepresented populations, so female police officers and members of our BIPOC community. So, as we go into next year with incentives, with increased capacity in background investigations, with some funding to actually put together a marketing campaign designed to recruit officers from around the country. I'm optimistic. I can't say 100% that we're going to fill all of our vacancies, but we're going to do everything we possibly can to achieve that goal. Thank you.
And so we would be talking about 17 vacant positions plus 10 more that will become vacant next year plus 8. So that's 35 hires. What has been our history of hiring in a given year? What's our track record?
Our hires range, in looking back over the last 10 or so years, range anywhere from as low as maybe 12 officer hires up to 24. And again, the 24, when we did that a few years ago, we were using existing background capacity of 2 FTEs in that assignment and didn't have some of the same incentives that we hope to be able to introduce later. So again, it is a very, very ambitious number, but that's what we'll be shooting for.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and so Susie, remind me a little bit about our budgeting process. So we're basically saying that we'll put these expenditures on the expense side, but it's offset with basically a contra revenue. Is that what it is?
Close.
Or
it's
contra
expense.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're essentially taking it in and out. And then the other portion would be a grant that doesn't have any cash impact on us anyway. So essentially we're budgeting, but not budgeting because it's all coming in. The grant is only paid if we actually do it.
Correct.
And the other portion that we would be paying for is not even hitting our budget because we're doing a plus and a minus of these, of our portion of the higher expense.
Well, we are budgeting for, there is an increase to expenditures of the little over $1 million that we would receive in grants should we be successful in filling these positions. The only offset is that we're using the budgeted vacancies line item for is the part that's not covered by the grant. And that is in recognition that that is an ambitious number to try to hire in 1 year. And because that is certainly a possibility, the only other options would be to reduce fund balance or prioritize this over something else that's already in the budget. So it seemed to make sense at this point, given the pretty big hill we have to climb in filling all those positions, to just take that extra portion and increase the budgeted vacancy number at this time.
Yeah. Well, I would only support it at this point because it's not impacting our budget in any way, because as this council and our community may know well, is that this has been a method of budgeting in the past where you have positions, but they never get filled. So you have a big surplus at the end of the year. And it really keeps the budget from being allocated to other priorities. And since we are not going to do that this time, because we're just basically putting it in as a revenue and an expense that cancel each other out, and it's not impacting other things. I could support doing this, although I think that we're going to all be disappointed to find that it's really impossible to hire 35 officers in a given year. I wish we could, and I hope we do, but I think it'd be very unlikely that we would be able to hit that target given the history and I mean, basically the labor market has become worse, not better, over the pandemic. So those are my comments, and I will give Mayor Franklin an opportunity to comment on this as well before we take the roll.
Yeah, thanks, President Stonecipher. First, thank you very much, Councilmember Murphy, for bringing this amendment forward and working so closely with Chief Templeman over the last few months to support our goals in public safety. I really appreciate it. I wanted to respond to just a couple of points. First, the questions or the points that were brought up on the diversity of our department. It's certainly been a goal of mine to diversify all of our departments in the city, but especially our Everett Police Department. And I really want to commend Chief Templeman and our HR department, as they've been very successfully recruiting diverse officers to the team. And I'm very excited about the new grant that we have to continue that trend. I think that I don't have the data in front of me, maybe Chief does, but we have definitely recruited a far more diverse group of candidates in the last few years than we've historically been able to. And I look forward to that percentage increasing. And so I think this gives us a really good opportunity also to be a department that is boldly hiring in a time that that's not the case across the country. I think that sets us apart and allows those really talented officers to see opportunity in Everett that I think this presents. Allows us to recruit kind of the best of the best. The other thing that I think is exciting about this, which is why I was so excited about the COPS grant as we brought it forward a year ago to all of you, is that the COPS grant is really focused on community policing efforts. And I think Councilmember Tui mentioned this as a downtown business leader. There's such a difference if you see an officer on a bicycle or being able to walk around and talk face-to-face with community members, with residents, with business leaders. And what the COPS grant intends to hire is exactly those positions. So as we start to fill those positions, you will be able to see that really positive community policing presence. Additionally, I very much appreciate all of President Stonecipher's points. I want to be very clear in setting the community expectation. Though we have this goal of hiring these additional officers, it may be some time before we're able to fill those vacancies. And so I'll try to be very transparent in reporting to all of you as our council and the public so that we can set the expectations accordingly, that it may take some time, although we're investing these efforts to recruit aggressively, it will take some time, and we'll try to be very open about that. But just again, thank you for this amendment, Councilmember Murphy, and thank you for working with our team on it. Thanks.
Thank you. And I can see a couple hands up. Council members that would like to speak again. I see Councilmember Moore. And you're muted.
Did you mute me? No, just kidding. It's late.
I don't have that power, but maybe I should.
I know there's times when we do that to each other. But I'm always talking to the citizens, like a budget is the plan. And thank you for talking about that. It creates the capacity for us to adapt to the worst case scenario. And as budget leaders, as Susie does, and as under the administration of the mayor, it creates us the opportunity. And every given year, we should have a surplus. We should have a carry forward. We should have the ability to go, wow, we survived the worst case. And it's not the catastrophic worst case. It's kind of the middle of the road of what can happen. And a part of that, I know within their projections, they're anticipating a certain level of vacancy. And so I'm saying that because this small piece about law enforcement is so critical to our community. It is so essential to our community. And Councilmember Stonecipher, I know like you, we're communicating to our community members to understand why would we add 8 police officers when in reality it may not be the case. But in the end, if we plan for the worst and hope for the best, we'll be in a good case. If we plan for the best and hope for the in other words, if we don't budget in this way, some moderate level of risk, then in the end, we're going to be in catastrophic cuts that will hurt people. So that's a big story in a small sentence. I just say we need to plan for what can happen And we know that law enforcement under the model in which we are using them are important. So again, I just support this effort.
Thank you. Councilmember Murphy.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate the comments, especially the mayor's comments, and I would just reiterate, I think that this commitment to adding to our police, and again, this is in part at least to just sort of keep up with the growth in our community, but this is a bold statement that I think, you know, if you're an officer in another police department throughout this state or even across the country, and you're not happy, you might be looking around for a community that has a commitment to public safety and is going to come out and say, yes, we do believe we want to prioritize public safety, and in particular, the police and law enforcement careers opportunities. So I think this is a bold statement, and I think it's a good thing for our community, and I just really appreciate all the comments from all my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Roberts.
Thanks. I appreciated the response from the mayor and Chief Templeman in terms of the diversity issue, and I have nothing further. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Vogely.
Sorry, didn't think I was going again. So I have nothing right now.
Thank you. Councilmember Toohey.
Yeah, I have no further comments. Thank you.
Councilmember Bader.
No additional comments either. I just wanted to call your attention. I think Chief Templeman has his hand raised there. Just want to make sure you see it.
I see that. I have no further comments. And so Chief Templeman.
Thank you, Council President Stonecipher. Just real briefly, a couple of clarifications. One, I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood these, and this kind of goes in line with what the mayor was indicating. These are positions that will be uniform positions, so they will be visible in our community, to include 4 of the 8 being additions to our bicycle unit. And that is a unit that I would like to see us expand outside of the downtown core and the transit center, and actually this will allow us to deploy bicycles into the neighborhoods and into some of the other areas that we have traditionally not been able to deploy this type of a resource in. So that, I think that's an important note for the community to understand. The other point that I just wanted to clarify in this, again, just to add to Mayor Franklin's comments about, you know, what will the community see, and being realistic. Even if we hired 30 some odd officers next year, there is ramp up time, right? From hiring an officer to training an officer and getting them out on the street. And so, you know, it could range anywhere from as low as 4 to 5 months if it's a lateral police officer, to as much as, you know, over a year if it's an entry-level police officer. So depending on who we're able to hire, that really will impact, you know, how visible these impacts will be to our community. And then lastly, just to clarify, as far as the diversity is concerned, just this last year, we have been able to hire 36% of our police officer hires this year have been female police officers, and 45% have been officers of color. So we are really focusing on that. And I have to give credit to our recruitment officer, Meg DeBucci, and a lot of our officers that are just out there in the community recruiting diverse officers. So that will continue to be a focus moving forward. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. And so I think we are taking a vote on the amendment. Clerk, is that correct?
Correct.
All right, we are voting on the amendment to add 8 police officers to the budget. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Moore?
Yes.
Councilmember Murphy?
Yes.
Councilmember Roberts?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
No.
Councilmember Toohey?
Yes.
Councilmember Bader?
Yes.
President Stonecipher?
Yes. Now we will go to the main motion, which is to approve the budget. Do I hear a motion for?
I think we already have a motion and a second, Council President.
Thank you. for keeping me honest here. All right, now we will take a vote on the main motion. Does anyone have any further comments before we do that? If so, unmute yourself and make yourself known.
I'm known. Sorry.
Thank you, Councilmember Vogely.
I am curious because in just a moment, we will be seeing the salary ordinance, item number 24. And I am curious, and there have been raises across the board. Are these new salaries reflective of the budget? And I don't know how they could be unless, I don't know. That is my question. Are the salaries reflected in the budget?
Yes, the salary assumptions are included in the proposed budget.
Okay, so the numbers of the proposed budget are the same numbers that we've been looking at since the first reading, and it's just the salary ordinance that has changed because it has.
Correct.
Okay, I'll ask more questions about that when we get to number 24.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have thank you. Anyone else have comments before we vote on the main motion? Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Moore,
Yes.
Councilmember Murphy,
Yes.
Councilmember Roberts,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely,
Yes.
Councilmember Tui,
Yes.
Councilmember Bader,
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. Now we'll move on to the council's briefing agenda. These items come before the city council serving as a council committee of the whole and are likely to be scheduled at a future meeting. Item 24 is Council Bill 2111-57, first reading. Adopt an ordinance establishing the basic salary schedule for City of Everett employees for 2022. The third and final reading will be on December 15th. And Candy Bartlett is here to start us off.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name's Candy Bartlett, Human Resources Director. As was just discussed, this is the first reading and briefing of the 2022 Salary Ordinance. Third and final reading is scheduled for the December 15th council meeting. The ordinance includes the 2022 wage increase negotiated in all collective bargaining agreements, with the exception of the IFF, which is the firefighters, and ATU, which represents transit employees. These are still being negotiated. Those contracts are still being negotiated. And the ordinance also includes a COLA increase for a point of employees, which is included in the proposed 2022 budget. The ordinance represents the mid, and max for each range. And I'm happy to answer any questions, sorry about that you might have.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from the council? We'll start with Councilmember Moore. Councilmember Moore. Okay, we'll come back to him. Go to Councilmember Murphy.
Thank you, President Stonecipher. Just all I will say is that it is important that we keep up with paying our employees fairly. And, we have inflation concerns, cost of living. We all read about it day after day. And I know in my day job, we are constantly struggling to hire and retain our employees. And it's just very important that we pay competitively. And I'm glad to see that we are continuing to move our city employees forward with this update to the salary schedule. So that's my only comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Roberts.
Thank you. I do not have any questions or comments at this time.
Councilmember Vogely.
Okay, yes, we are talking about the salary ordinance, right?
Yes.
Because I'm double checking some things here on my desk. Where does it say what percentage that we have increased rates? Because I don't know what is a big deal and what isn't. I just see the highest step has, they've all increased by some amount. And so that's my question one.
I'm happy to answer that. So EPOA, EPMA, as was negotiated in their collective bargaining agreements, this is the last year of EPOA's contract, and that is a 4% increase. EPMA, we're in the second year of their contract, that is a 4% increase. AFSCME and Crafts, this will be the third year of their contracts, and that is a 3.5% increase. And those were also negotiated. And then the appointive increase is 3.5%. And I'd like to just remind everyone that the cost of living for June to June was 5.5%. Please correct me, Susie, if I'm wrong on that.
No, you are correct. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And then also going through all of these, it looks like there have been some new additions to the classification titles, and there hasn't necessarily been any extractions of classifications. So like there's a community, there are many additions. So my question then is, how do we decide who is an added, how does a classification title get added, and how do we get them taken away when they haven't been utilized in years, like the chief administrative assistant?
Great questions. Generally, we go through in human resources and do remove job titles that are no longer part of the budget. So if it's a budgeted position, we generally, even though there may not be an incumbent in that position, we do still leave it in the salary ordinance. But you're right, in that position, there is no one there, and we could remove that position. There is no incumbent in that position. As far as new positions for non-represented employees, we do have a point of ordinance that allows us to go through, and there are sometimes positions that may change and they go through class spec changes. We then refactor the job and determine what the market salary is for that job. And we have an ordinance that allows us to do that. And then we do put those into the salary ordinance, and then that is when you approve it during this process.
Since this is a brand new salary ordinance, and I have been basing all of my research on the budget from the 2021 salary ordinance, I think I'm going to have more questions that I'm not prepared to ask tonight. But just, I guess, be aware. Because I see that there has been a few upgrades in classification titles, even if those, in like the past 3 years. And those are not the ones that have been added. And I'm not sure that I have seen the additional classifications in the budget. Looking at the line item thing, looking at the budget expenditure line item pamphlet book, with all of the budget increases, I can see that at least one of those, they're going to be able to tell that their salary has increased for the year. And by the way, I am all for paying people. So I am not against that. This is very much appropriate. But if that's all I'm going to say right now. And I will have more questions. So thank you.
Thank you. I can tell you that the classifications are represented. If you go to each department's budget, it does represent, you should see those same titles represented within each department's or each fund's budget. But I'm happy, I'll be here for the next 2 readings as well, and happy to answer any further questions you might have.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And we go next to Councilmember Toohey.
I don't have any questions. Thanks, Council President.
Thank you. And Councilmember Bader.
No questions either. Thank you.
And I have no questions. We move on to our next briefing item. Number 25, Council Bill 2111-58, first reading. Adopt the proposed ordinance amending Section 1C of Ordinance 1594-89 as amended by Section 1 of Ordinance number 2879-05, establishing Juneteenth as a city holiday, third and final reading on December 15th, 2021. And Candy, back to you, maybe. I see Marcy.
Thank you. I'm actually going to have Marcy Hammer, our HR manager, take this one, but I will also be here to assist.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Candy. So this is the first reading and briefing to establish Juneteenth as a city recognized holiday. As mentioned, Councilmember Stonecipher, the third and final reading is scheduled for December 15th. June 19th is a day of remembrance of the day African slaves learned of their freedom in the United States. President Biden signed into law the Juneteenth National Independence Day Act, which made Juneteenth a federal holiday. Not too long after, Governor Inslee then signed into law House Bill 1016, which also established the 19th of June as a legal holiday here in Washington State. Beginning in 2022, Juneteenth will actually be recognized on Monday, June 20th. In addition, formally recognizing Juneteenth will provide official recognition of this momentous day for the city of Everett and increase awareness of the past, present, and future struggle for equality. This amended ordinance will add one additional paid holiday for all non-represented employees. The municipal court judges and mayor position also is included as per the ordinance. The additional holiday will also be negotiated with all other union groups. And at this time, if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. We'll go down the roll. Councilmember Moore.
No questions.
Councilmember Murphy.
No questions. Thank you, Marcy.
Councilmember Roberts.
No questions. Happy to see this come forward. Thank you.
Councilmember Vogely.
I am also glad that it is here, and I will not comment at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Toohey.
I have no comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Bader.
No comments either. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have no comments. Move on to item 26, Council Bill 2111-56. First reading, adopt an ordinance approving the appropriations of the 2021 revised City of Everett budget and amending ordinance number 3827-21. The third and final reading will also be on December 15th. And Susie.
Hey, thank you. Good evening again. And this, if you'll give me just one moment to share my screen, I'll bring up my slides and hopefully that is working. So yes, this is our fourth and final proposed amendment to the 2021 budget. If approved, it will increase the citywide expenditure budget by $4,515,155. Starting with general government proposed amendments, the finance department is in need of temporary labor to help with the transition of the city clerk position and a leave of absence. In addition, budget authority is needed to fund a bank buyout due to staff turnover. The total requested is $37,200. GGA 24 recognizes a donation made by the Noon Company of 2,000 vials of its hydration tablets to the police department. The value of the donation is approximately $7,000. GGA 25 increases the police budget for a grant award from the Washington State Department of Commerce for the purchase of 12 compressed air, less lethal launchers and the associated supplies to support patrol operations and the Special Operations Group. Next, we have several proposed amendments for the fire department, starting with a $75,100 Assistance to Firefighters grant to purchase fire hose nozzles, which will improve the capability of fire crews to engage fires effectively and put them out as quickly as possible. GGA 27 increases the fire department's budget for costs associated with the department's participation in the COVID-19 mass vaccination efforts earlier this year. Total costs incurred were approximately $466,250. Budget amendment number 2 amended the budget for $456,500. This amendment increases the labor budget by the balance of $9,750. The department expects to be reimbursed by the Washington State Department of Health for these costs. GGA 28 acknowledges fire department services provided to outside agencies for wildfire assistance across our state and in California. The city will be reimbursed by state and federal agencies for 100% of the costs associated with these deployments. The last proposed amendment on this slide increases the fire department budget for retirement payouts. The department has experienced more retirements than usual this year. The original budget included $211,000 for retirement-related expenses. Costs are now estimated to end the year at approximately $438,000. This amendment will increase the department's labor budget by the balance of $226,915. The last fire department amendment increases overtime budget by $584,400 to cover a higher than normal daily absenteeism rate this year. The absences directly affect overtime requirements as staff are needed to backfill the absences. Reasons for absences include injury, disability, COVID-19 quarantines, and a COVID-19 policy of no illness allowed at work. GGA 31 increases the facilities department's budget by $62,620 for unbudgeted costs related to the purchase of citywide personal protection equipment, including gloves, plexiglass sneeze guards, cubicle separations, and sanitation supplies. GGA 32 amends the municipal arts budget by a total of $51,800. Economic development was successful in obtaining funds for the 4th of July and sorticulture events, including a $15,000 City of Everett lodging tax grant and a $21,800 sponsorship to plan and execute the 4th of July festival, and a $15,000 Snohomish County TPA grant for marketing the sorticulture event. GGA 33 is a housekeeping issue related to a new governmental accounting requirement. Each year, the state distributes a portion of its 2% tax on insurance policy premiums to all cities with pre-left firefighters' pension funds based on their proportionate number of paid firefighters. The funds are restricted and must be used for the Left One Firefighters Pension Fund. In the past, we have posted these funds directly into the Fire Pension Fund. However, the new guidance requires that the funds first be posted as revenue to the general fund and then recorded as an expense of the general fund when payment is made to the Left One Fire Pension Fund. Moving on to non-general government proposed amendments, we start with an increase to the CIP3 budget of $412,000 for 2 projects previously approved by council: the Howarth Park Sport Court renovation and the Rotary Park Improvements Project. NGA 14 amends the Motor Vehicle Replacement Fund by $540,000 for the purchase of 9 police vehicles as recently authorized by council. These vehicles are included in the 2022 authorized replacement list, but are being ordered early due to supply chain issues and increased vehicle costs. NGA 15 increases the street and alley vacation funded projects budget for its share of the West Marine View Drive and Alverson Boulevard pedestrian and bicycle safety project. The total project cost is $875,000, with $400,200 from a state grant, $390,000 from Fund 119 Street Improvements Fund, and $75,000 from the Real Property Fund. NGA 16 provides $102,000 for the construction of the Lowell Riverfront Park off-leash area. The total estimated project cost is $172,000, with $80,000 funded by a grant from Snohomish County. The project will provide a fenced 0.85 acre off-leash space just north of the Lowell Riverfront parking lot. NGA 17 increases the EMS budget by $178,000 for medical supplies. EMS has experienced significantly higher than average transports this year, resulting in an increase in medical supply use. This amendment will bring the total 2021 medical supply budget to $478,000. NGA 18 relates to the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA funds. As you know, the city is the recipient of a $20,695,000 in ARPA funds. The first of two equal payments in the amount of $10,347,000 was received earlier this year. This amendment increases the general government's special projects revenue budget by the amount received, increases the expenditure budget by $1.4 million, and increases the ending fund balance budget by $8.8 million. The expenditure budget includes $1 million for the Everett Ford Grant Program as approved by resolution at the October 27 council meeting, and $477,000 for the purchase of 40 additional pallet shelters and one 2-stall bathroom unit as approved at the September 1st council meeting. NGA 19 accounts for a criminal justice Edward Byrne Memorial Grant in the amount of $41,370. These funds will be used to replace a camera and recording system in one precinct interview room and to purchase computer forensic equipment and software. And the last proposed amendment increases the Information Technology Reserve Fund budget by a total of $203,495 for maintenance and infrastructure projects, including cybersecurity protection tools, a Microsoft Enterprise Agreement licensing cost increase, costs associated with the asset management system project, and funds to upgrade an existing on-premises server. And with that, that concludes the amendments in budget amendment number 4.
Thank you, Susie. We're going to go down the roll, see if there are any questions or comments from council, starting with Councilmember Moore.
No questions. Thank you, Susie.
Thank you.
Councilmember Murphy.
Susie, great job summarizing all that. I have no questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Roberts.
Yeah, ditto. Thanks, Susie. No questions or comments.
Thank you.
Councilmember Vogely.
No questions or comments. Thank you.
Thanks.
Councilmember Toohey. Let's see, Councilmember Toohey. We'll come back to her. Councilmember Bader.
No questions or comments. Thanks.
And I have no questions or comments. Let's see, Councilmember Toohey, I skipped over you. Are you there? Okay. With no more comments from council, we'll move on to our last briefing item, item 27, Council Bill 2111-60. It's a first reading. Adopt the proposed ordinance extending the special business and occupation tax rate, amending ordinance 3711-19, and the third and final reading will be on December 15th. Susie.
Yes, one more for me here. So you can allow me to share my screen real quickly. And there we go. Okay, so tonight I'm going to present an amendment to our B&O tax ordinance that extends and modifies the special tax rate for gross receipts above specified thresholds. So in order to give you a little bit of history on this, it's probably been quite a while since we've talked about it, but in 2005, City Council passed an ordinance that created a special tax rate for manufacturers that exceeded a specified threshold in gross receipts. The special rate first went into effect on January 1st of 2006 and is scheduled to sunset on December 31st, 2023. For the first 4 years, the threshold at which the lower rate takes effect was $6 billion. The tax rate paid on the first $6 billion was 0.1%, which is the common B&O tax rate for all businesses doing business in Everett. For all gross receipts exceeding $6 billion, the tax rate dropped to 0.025%. In 2010, the threshold for the lower tax rate increased to $7 billion and then to $8 billion in 2016. The threshold hasn't changed since 2016. The amendment before you for consideration extends the special tax rate to all businesses, not just manufacturers, for 10 years. It also provides for 3 additional increases in the threshold amount. In 2025, the threshold would increase to 8.5 billion, then 9 billion in 2028, and finally 9.5 billion in 2031. The special rate sunsets on December 31st, 2033. Extending the special tax rate and including all business types is important for business retention, particularly now as we're beginning to recover from the significant economic harm caused by the pandemic. And with that, that concludes the information I have for you this evening on this ordinance, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Great. Let's see what we have for questions, starting with Councilmember Moore.
I have no questions. I fully support the continuation of this economic development measure.
Thank you. Councilmember Murphy.
No questions. Again, I agree with Councilmember Moore. This is an important tool that we put in place to encourage large businesses in Everett, and I'm fully supportive. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Roberts.
No questions. I appreciate this coming forward. I support it, and I think it provides the certainty and predictability that's important for business retention. Thanks.
Councilmember Vogely.
Thank you. No comments or questions.
Councilmember Toohey.
No questions or comments. Thanks.
Councilmember Bader.
Thanks, Council President. Kind of echoing earlier comments, tax predictability, I think, is a critical factor for employers when determining where to grow their business and to invest. It's one small way Everett can set itself apart in demonstrating that we have a welcoming business environment, and I think it adds that certainty and it demonstrates our commitment to diversifying our economy. Hopefully we can attract additional large employers to Everett by doing this. So thanks for bringing this forward, Susie and the administration. And obviously doing so again continues to acknowledge the vital role that manufacturing plays here in Everett too. So thanks again.
Thank you. And I have no questions or comments. That brings us to the end of our agenda. And as noted at the start of the meeting and provided on our screen now, you may contact Deb Williams in the council office for instructions on watching, listening, or participating in our weekly meeting. She can be reached by phone at 425-257-8703 or by email at dwilliams@everettwa.gov. And with no further business, we are now adjourned.